Hey, everybody. Terrence and I want to thank you so much for all the Drinks with My Wife podcast downloads.
Thank you.
He can never give me my moments. Never. Anyway, we're glad you're enjoying it. Please be sure to share with your friends, family, and colleagues that you think will enjoy our madness as well. And don't forget to subscribe, because that gives you notifications of new episodes, which happen every week. Thanks again, and enjoy, enjoy, enjoy.
Hello, Uana.
Hello, Terrence.
This is weird. So if you only do audio, you have no idea right now, but we usually do video. But if you're watching on YouTube, we want to apologize. We couldn't do video right now. It's a long story.
But you can always listen.
Exactly.
The beauty of audio, though, is you can listen anywhere.
This is true. And I look better. But I'll put a link up on YouTube. I'll put a link up on YouTube.
You do look better on audio. That is actually quite true. That's a true statement.
I can't insult myself that you come off and like tip dunk.
What are you drinking?
I drink a Manhattan. I gotta start switching up. I'm drinking a Manhattan. I was about to say I'm a slave to Uncle Nearest, but I feel like that doesn't sound right. So I am fiercely loyal. Loyal. Yeah. You know me. Anything black owned, female owned, minority owned, I'm in.
And it's High West Double Rye, right?
Yes, it is High West Double Rye.
And I'm going to guess it's probably the best one you've ever had.
Yes, it is the best one I've ever had.
Thank you. I made it.
Want to make my drink.
Which I never do.
No. So if you all don't, maybe that's why we don't have video, because if I fucking pass out and y'all don't find my body.
Dateline,
exactly.
We'll have to do a part 2 of the crime shows one. I am drinking, because it's a very hot day today, a Stoli vodka and light pink lemonade.
Nice.
It's very good.
That is a nice, refreshing
It's
drink.
very refreshing, and it feels perfect on a day like today that is so hot. So hot.
So,
what do you want to talk about?
I've got an idea. I've got something, and I didn't even write it down because I wanted it to sound organic and fresh. And so if I say something that doesn't make any sense, please let me know that doesn't make any damn sense.
Oh, trust me.
When you think back to when you were, let's say 22, 23, when you start thinking about marriage and, being an adult, back whether it's true or not, how can you think of characteristics that you would think defined a man? Can you remember what those things might have been?
Wow. That
actually made sense when I said it out loud.
It sure did.
It was kind of banging around my head all day. That's it.
First of all, if I think today about the fact that at 22 and 23 years old, I was thinking about getting married.
How stupid were we?
That's just fucking ridiculous. Like, what were we?
Dumb.
What were we thinking? What were we thinking? God. If I could go back in time and do it over, I would never have gotten married that early. But I would still want my child, right? If I could keep Cole and then not have anyway.
I love how you've shifted gears.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry.
That's all right.
It's how I do.
I know.
I don't think I did think about that, quite frankly. I'm not sure I thought about what I wanted in a man.
Not what you wanted in a man.
Oh,
like if you defined a man. So.
Oh, if I had defined what a man is to me.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Got it. I see what you're saying now. Now I understand much better. I think, so much of it was probably wrapped up in who my dad was.
I can see that. Because
he was a man. I mean, he
had a gun. He shot shit.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Like, yeah,
he hunted. He fished. He had the very traditional role within the house as well. A very old-fashioned and traditional role, but still, it was very clear what his role was.
Which was?
As the man, like, he was responsible for the yard. Mm-hmm. So he mowed the lawn, and he took care of the garden.
Right.
And so that's what I mean by,
so primary,
by that.
He was a breadwinner, which is a weird term, but
Although both my parents worked always.
I know. I'm not saying that. I just think about that. I think it's such more of a modern thing that a woman can make more money than a man, and it's not regarded that way.
Got it.
In any kind of way. I think there's still some circles where they'll be bothered, but
Sure.
it's definitely more of a modern convention than it was, when you were coming up.
Yeah, but I definitely think it very much revolved around who he was.
Right.
He was also like incredibly loving, and he always, I can remember even as a kid, I was definitely a daddy's girl, and
Right.
I always wanted to be around him no matter where he went, and he would always take me.
Yeah, that's cool.
He would always take me, like, unless he was going somewhere that he
Right.
couldn't. But
Right.
there was never a moment where I can remember, like, him saying, "Oh, I'm going to the hardware store," and me saying, "I want to come," and he said, "No."
Right.
Never. Like,
Right.
he always let me.
That
he
is
always
very loving.
Yeah.
And it was funny too, because I think generationally that was not always the case. I think about, this is no disrespect to my father, but the truth is my father was not a loving person in that way. Never felt like I was in the way, but there was never those huge overtures in that way. It's interesting that you said about your father because, recently, of course, we know that my grandmother passed. And I've been saying this for years, back when they were all her, my Aunt Julia, and of course my mother, who is still alive. I would always say that I come from a long line of badass women because those women, even though Julia had been married, although her husband passed before I knew him, and then my grandmother was married, and then my mother was married and divorced. But the powerful forces in my world were women. My father was around and he was, present as he could be. And I have an uncle who was always awesome. So I had male role models. But when I was thinking about my grandmother and that phrase that I always say that I come from a long line of badass women, it made me think, like, how did that shape the type of women when I was young, what type of women I was attracted to, what type of woman I married in the first marriage, what type of woman I'm married to now. I just think that impacts you in a lot of ways. And the reason I go back to being 22 or something like that is because when you're that age, the last thing you ever think is that you're going to be, that your parents factor into the type of person you're going to be with.
Well, I was just going to say, I wish I had been smart enough to think about that. Seriously. And nothing against my first husband, for sure. But I wish I had looked for certain things and required those things. Like I just kind of spewed off things about my dad and how he was a man. And I think that definition has changed over time, as more and more people go off to college and become professionals, right? They don't have to work with their hands as much necessarily.
I mean, I can work with my hands, but I'm not shooting shit unless they come in the house.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't hunt. I go to Kroger. Shit.
But I don't believe I ever utilized him as the barometer for what a man is and what I should potentially require.
But surely there are. I didn't either. By the way, I did not. I mean, my ex-wife was the complete opposite of my mother.
Mm-hmm. Maybe that's what happens.
Yeah, the complete opposite. They have some characteristics in common, but but overall they are very, very different people. And now I look at, like with you, I go, okay, you're much more in line in many ways with who my mother and my grandmother was, and my aunt. And so I don't think that there must be someone who uses them as a barometer. There must be some odd thing, or maybe they're just insightful. They go, damn, I want someone just like my dad.
I think it probably happens with frequency, actually.
Damn, life in the suburbs.
But here's what I will say. I think youth plays a part of it, right?
What do you mean?
Well, I started dating my ex-husband when we were 16 years old, right? So I was just happy a boy liked me. I wasn't thinking about, hey, can you shoot shit? Can you build stuff? Like,
Right.
if the faucet breaks, what are you calling, a plumber, or can you
Right.
grab a screwdriver?
Right.
Like, who's thinking about that, right?
Right.
At that age. And so maybe youth plays a part of it, and maybe for people who actually get married when they're a little bit older, maybe they do require more, and maybe whether it's consciously or subconsciously, they are seeking out characteristics that they saw in their parent.
Yeah, you're right. Because maybe the older you get, I know my theory was that until you're over 25, everything you do is defined about your parents, meaning either you do exactly what they say or you're doing exactly opposite of what they say. But they're a huge role, and we watched it play out with our own family. And thing about it is, the older you get, like we're not good test people because we were married previously, but I would imagine the older you get, just like everyone else, you begin to appreciate your parents a lot more. And so maybe you do grasp onto those characteristics of what they did. I even think about, like, just as a ramble, but I think about, like, my father. There was a lot of things I took from, my father and I were, we were not super close, but I was a son, went over and stayed, whenever I saw him every Sunday, that's what we did. We went and did different stuff, but that was what we did. But it wasn't until I started getting older and I found out that there were men who couldn't fix shit where I was stunned. And I was like, damn, he doesn't know how to do the most basic of things. And those are not only characteristics I picked up from my father. I can think back to something going wrong with my mother's car. Or I used to have a piece of shit Delta 88, something going wrong, and my father being annoyed I didn't know how to fix a radiator. Like, what shit? No one's ever taught me how to fix a radiator, so fucking will you teach me how to fix a radiator? So I took those things for granted. And so what I guess my point being on what you were saying is that the older you get, I do think you begin to appreciate things that both your mother and your father give you. And so maybe you start looking at things different. I definitely looked at my mother differently. I never took my mother for granted, but I fucking began to appreciate her the older I got. I was like, damn.
And maybe there's qualities and characteristics that are less obvious that the parent had and really become ingrained in your subconscious. So just for example, like, again, if I think about my dad, and I think about what he did in his life, right? He was born in Italy. He, got a job on a ship. And when he got to New York, at 19 years old, what did he do? He jumped ship.
The original illegal immigrant.
Yeah.
But became legal.
Yeah.
But became legal.
He might be, what do they call that? Citizen zero? What do they call that first person who does it?
The first one.
The first one who does it. I don't know.
He was one of many people who jumped illegally and then became citizens.
Yeah.
Let's not act like this is some new shit.
That's right.
We just didn't call them aliens back then.
That's true. And so, like, if I think about the qualities that it takes to have that kind of drive, that dedication, that goal, that doing anything at any cost to achieve it for yourself, even the risk of being arrested.
Right.
When I think about that quality, well, I can see that in my ex. I can see that in you.
Right.
I can, right? And so
there's something on a deeper level.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so,
100%.
but that's also kind of subconscious as well, right? I don't know. I think we're so focused on these things of, oh, he's smart and he's funny.
Or my dad was a lawyer. It's the most surface shit.
Yeah.
As opposed to going, the idea that you could have, you being from Connecticut, the child of immigrant parents, could have similar characteristics to my mother, who was born in a place called Slaughters, Kentucky.
Right.
Fucking
exactly.
is just a nickname. It's Slaughters, Kentucky.
Right.
But you're right; those things are below the surface, and how would we don't really think about them until you start seeing them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And again, maybe this goes to just age and recognizing the level of importance that they have, that they are in your life. But like, I also think about the fact that, my dad dropped out of school at in the 6th grade because he had to, and
take care of his family.
And yet, man, he read so much and he knew so much. And then I can look back on that now and go, well, that's a quality that I did see in my ex and I do see in you. And so again, maybe it becomes one of those things that on a kind of a subconscious level, I sought that out because maybe that's the important thing. Like, okay, my dad built, a shed in our yard. I don't think you can do that, but
Me?
okay.
What? Don't challenge me.
But you can call Home Depot or go online like nobody's
Why are
business.
you disrespecting? Oh my god! Oh my god! I'm so fucking mechanical. That hurts. That cuts deep.
So
I don't know if I can build a shed though. By the way, I can fix shit. I don't know if I can build it.
Exactly. And so my point is just maybe there are deeper things that are not just as we get older, but potentially generationally that shift as well.
Right.
And I think there are so many factors that go into that, quite frankly. I think it goes to where you brought up. I think it goes into your education. I think it goes into
But they're vastly different, though. You think about, like you mentioned me, your ex-husband, Bob, and then your father and my dad. All four big readers. Bob went to law school. I did not. My dad dropped out of school at 14 years old. And my mother would always say, my mother being super smart and graduated high school at 16 years old and all this other shit, my mother would always go, your dad is so much more well-read than me because he read everything.
Right.
And that was one of the, and I remember she used to say that when I was growing up. And I never forget, I bought him a book for his birthday about Martin Luther King and he never mentioned it. He said, oh, thank you. And so he didn't mention it again for months. And then I never forget him going, we were like getting gas or something, and we were talking about something. He goes, oh, that fuck, man. And my dad cursed a lot, by the way, which is where I got it. But, I was reading that shit. What's the book you got me? And I was like, oh, Something of Dreams, Martin Luther King. Yeah. Man, I'm going to tell you something about that motherfucker. And so he just starts going off. Like, he couldn't remember names, never.
But he remembered the story, whatever the
details of that book and what took place during the Civil Rights Movement. And my father was not part of the Civil Rights Movement. My father was, as a lot of black people weren't. Like, my dad was just trying to make rent. And so it was interesting to pick out that little nugget. Like, man, this dude has read this entire book and has never even mentioned it, but somehow it came up in an organic conversation. And you think about how different similar that is to your father, who was an immigrant. Like, I think, as I think about this now, because it wasn't about being married and things like that, but I think about it now, and what's interesting is whenever people talk about their mate or who they're potentially going to be with, oh, he's funny. A woman said that he's funny, makes a good living. The thing they never talk about those things that we're talking about, those things that are a little bit more detailed. Like for you, if you were to say, so what's he like or what's she like? And they were to go, man, she is so fucking well read. She really yeah, man, she's just sharp. Like, well, where did she go to school? I don't know. She actually jumped a ship when she was visiting from Italy and became like, that's a fascinating fucking story. But yet somehow it becomes about status as opposed to the specific details of what make a person who they are. You know what I mean? Because when you get to those things, those are the things that are more interesting and important for me anyway. But that's with age, though.
So if you had to think about then your mom, your grandmother, your Aunt Julia, like if you had to think about those maybe more subconscious things like that, what do you see as maybe common characteristics that you recognized that either existed in your ex and maybe me, or that you can think about now and recognize these are the things I sought?
Right. Well, if I'm going to go off surface things.
No, I'm not talking about surface things.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking about those.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead. Do both.
both.
No, do both.
Because the surface stuff is kind of easy. When I think all very stylish, also very proud, also very organized.
Oh,
There's a weird one, right?
Oh, it
But
is.
very. My mother's gonna, if she ever hears this, she's gonna hate that because she's probably the least organized of the five. But she's organized. She's run businesses of sorts. So it's like my mother's organized. She's a little forgetful, but she's super organized. And for a person who leans more on the artistic side, not autistic, artistic side, I can be a little disorganized about certain things. It's only organized if it's important to me. So those are characteristics I can think off the top of my head. The more subconscious thing is a little bit tougher. When I think I will relate it to, for now, I just go you, my mom, Julia, Pauline, and Paulette.
Oh, that really matters.
So when I think about those, there are good and there are bad. You all are what I used to call you with Cole, mother bears. Like my aunt protected me from my grandmother. And then when my aunt passed, my grandmother was protecting me from my mom. Like, I can hear Julia's voice in my head right now. Terry didn't mean to do it. Leave him alone. Like,
Right.
just protect her. And
Yeah.
you do the same thing with Cole. Used to do the same thing with Cole. Now you're more apt to be like, he's a jackass. But there's that mother bear thing where you can be very loving, but it's also like, you don't get to talk shit about mine. So there's that, but there's also when I look at what each of you all have done in your lives. You got divorced and moved across country. My mother got divorced, back in the 70s and moved back to Southern Indiana with nothing, and moved back in with her mom when that was not acceptable. You know what I mean? My aunt moved to the north. My grandmother moved to the north, lived with her for a short period, and then what did she do? She went back down to take care of her parents as they passed away. But they went through. There's a fearlessness, and when I think about not allowing fear to dictate your life is so ever present. But also for me, I recognize like, no, that's where I got that from. Something's not right. Something's not working. It doesn't mean it's an immediate recognition, but it's also like not being paralyzed by fear, not going, oh my God, I've got 3 boys. It's the 70s. I got no money. I just need to up and go.
Right.
And that's what my mother did. And you did something similar. And it was just like, there's something about fearlessness that was working on a subconscious level. And you know what? And to be fair with my ex-wife, not that I was being unfair, I think she has characteristics like that too. She has an utmost belief in herself. And I think that is the overriding confidence that's the overriding characteristic that you all have. Undying confidence. My grandmother knew she cooked better than everybody, even if she acted like she didn't.
Right.
And she knew she was going to find a way to survive. Julia would protect everybody. She kept a 22 in her bag. Like, she don't worry about shit. I can take care of it. And then my mother did that for us. So I think all 5 women are those who remain are confident women. And that is the sexiest thing in the world. And it's the thing that I think I was always able to pick out. Like, I could always tell when she's fronting.
Right. Yeah.
When I was dating, like, yeah, she's just acting badass. She's not really badass, but yeah, that's cool. I'll buy her another drink, see where it goes. We'll see how confident she is after another martini.
Exactly. See how confident she is when I get her home.
But I think that's the overriding thing. But you know what? I'm gonna get her a refill because I have a follow-up question.
Oh, let's do it.
Ooh,
let's take a break.
Cool. We are going through extremely difficult times in our country right now.
Terrence and I are doing our part to fight for justice, and we'd like to encourage you to do the same, whether that's marching, protesting, or donating.
In the description for Drinks with My Wife, we'll have a link to Black Lives Matter and a variety of other charities where you can give. Thank you for joining Drinks with My Wife.
Thanks.
So, after we got a nice little refill,
Yes, indeed.
I hope everyone else got a refill. I hope people are drinking along. You know what I mean?
That would be nice. But the reality is as long as they're listening, I don't care when they're listening or where they're at when they're listening.
This is true.
Whether you have a cocktail or just water, it doesn't matter.
It would be cool one day to do a live stream though, where people join us for a drink.
Let's do that.
Coming
soon.
We
Coming soon.
We got some shit coming up.
I think we just created a trailer.
No, I was going to ask you a follow-up question because we were talking about the characteristics of a man and a woman, the definitions when you were young, and you said something that was interesting to me. You said it has changed. It changes. You believe that it kind of changes with time. Did you ever begin to recognize that you saw things different? Did you, at some point in time, especially after a divorce, did you begin to go, no, I see men differently now? Like, did it open up your horizon? Did divorce open up your horizons? I guess would be the question.
I don't think so.
So you never felt like you were marrying a type?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't think I was. But also I do kind of feel like They're definitely. Oh, sorry. Let me start over.
This is what happens when you talk without asking questions first.
I know. Let's start over. Retake. I definitely recognized that when I saw someone, a man, behaving in a way that for me, didn't feel like manly. I don't want to say manly. That's such a horrible word because I don't even, but let me continue before I lose people. that I recognized, see, I can't be with that type of person.
Right.
I'll give you a perfect example, which was I was standing in line for an ATM. Mm-hmm. And it was before an outdoor concert. Mm-hmm. And I was getting cash before going into the venue. And it was a lengthy line for the ATM because mm-hmm. it was kind of near the entrance. And so, of course, that's when everybody was kind of grabbing money. And so there were kind of a couple of people in front, but directly in front of me was a couple, clearly a couple. Mm-hmm. And there happened to be this dude kind of just walking up and down the line. Mm-hmm. And he was clearly high, drunk, something, whatever he was.
Shit wasn't right.
But he was being a real jackass to people also in the line.
Right.
And I remember the couple in front of me, the woman went up to the ATM and the man she was with,
right,
just kind of waited next to her, but off to the side a little bit. And this drunk high dude walked up directly to her. And the man she was with did absolutely nothing. And I remember thinking to myself, see, I can't be with a dude like that. I cannot be with a dude like that. I cannot be with someone who in some way, shape, or form doesn't recognize that this is a potential situation.
100%.
And steps in and goes, whoa.
Nothing more. Yeah. Yep.
Back just 2 steps. Yeah. Take a couple of steps.
Exactly.
Take a couple of steps away. It doesn't mean confrontation. Doesn't mean getting angry. It doesn't mean starting a fight.
But also making her insecure.
But it makes it clear that, no, you're not going to step up this close to the woman I'm with who's grabbing cash out of an ATM, and clearly you are out of your mind right now. And so I guess that's what I mean. Like, I think when things like that took place, and I'm not even suggesting they happen with any level of frequency, but I think whatever those things are, mm-hmm. it starts to form the things you require,
right,
and the things you're not going to want.
Do with it. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, no, it doesn't mean that you have to be the big manly man and get into some stupid fight and stuff like that, or that a woman has to have certain quote unquote maternal instincts and things like that. But you'd be lying to yourself if you think that everyone defines what they want. Everyone mm-hmm. defines what they want. So that's what was making me laugh when you're like, I don't want to be with that kind of guy. Everyone's done that. Everyone's done that where they go, I don't want to be with that. Because if you don't make choices, that's how you end up with like some fucking weirdo. So it's like, hopefully you have some level of a standard, and you adhere to that.
Yeah, or it's just a requirement. It's what you require, right? And everybody's requirements are different. Yep. Nobody's are right and nobody's are wrong. But what you're willing to tolerate and what you're willing to put up with is all based on what you require from another human being.
Right.
And so for me, if I felt like you were not the type of person to stand up for me or mm-hmm. who had my back, mm-hmm. maybe that's the way to say it. If I felt like you didn't have my back,
right,
I could never be
right, and you wouldn't feel comfortable. Yeah, that's it's interesting because I do think you, it's funny you say about having your back. I got your front, but I asked that just because, like I said, I feel like as you age. I remember we went to see our friends play, and it was about dating and this and the other. While I did not have a long specific list of things, long list of what I wanted the characteristics in a woman, I do think the older I got, the more open I became. Because I do think there is I can't think of the male equivalent because there is none, which would be the Cinderella factor, where you think that this person needs to have all these different characteristics met, and then you're going to live happily ever after. And I think the older you get, especially after you have to pay a divorce attorney, you start going, you know what, maybe I should open up the pool a little bit more. And so the reason I say that, when I was asking about the definition of a man changing, maybe characteristics that were once a turnoff becomes more of a, you might start looking at it differently. You know what I mean? Because this all started off about what means to define a man. And so...
Or a woman.
Or, no, yeah. Well, of course, for me, it would be a woman. And it's one of those things, it's like, that's why I mentioned the maternal instinct thing. Like, not every woman has that. And, and unfortunately, every other day you see something in some newspaper, someone's fucking mom shaming someone for how they're handling their child, and this, that, and the other. And whether it's accurate or not, like it is an assault on women, and yet you never see any criticisms of men in that way.
100%.
Yeah, you never see any. So I think about, that's one of the things I think about people going after, because I did think, I want her to be motherly and this, that, and the other. And I tell you, I know, I'm pretty sure I've told you, it was like when we first, like our first kind of real date hangout, and we were talking about kids. And you had talked about how Cole had done something that pissed you off.
God, was it a Tuesday?
But you were talking about how he's walking out. You're like, let's outside right now. And you're talking about how you were walking outside. And you like shoved him in the back like you got in his face. And I don't know if that
Sounds
was
about right.
I don't know if you were like filling me out, and you have no idea. I was like, man, damn, that sounds like my mom. My mother being 2'3" of fucking fire. It was just like, oh my God. Like, and you think about that description, like that could be scary and a turnoff for a certain type of man, as opposed to, I came from that family.
Yeah, sure.
I came from that, where just because my mother put her hands on me, it was actually the complete opposite of abuse. It was like, no, this is fucking rearing a child. Now, times have changed in many ways, shapes, and forms, but growing up, my mother would snatch a collar in a minute. You know what I mean? So I think about when you were describing that, I was like, oh shit, that's actually kind of cool,
And I think that's, now you bring up a whole nother layer of what you might require from someone else. And that's about who they are as a parent.
Ooh, that's...
Right. Because now regardless of your gender and regardless of your sexuality, quite frankly, who you partner with, if you decide you're going to have children together, you have no idea who they are as a parent. Right. And yet you might require certain things of them based on who your own parents were.
True.
And
you also think
what you thought was the right way to do things and what you thought was not the best way to be doing things. And so this is just a whole nother layer.
This is a big layer.
This should be a different episode, maybe.
This is a big layer, because it could be split. Because seriously, it's not just when you marry someone, because it's what I always say, children are the great truth. You're really going to find out who you're married to when you start having kids.
100%.
But as step parents, as we are, like I mentioned that incident that occurred before you and I knew each other with Cole. But then I met him. If he was one of those spoiled punks where he called his mom a fucking bitch and yelled at him, I would have. By the way, we were new together, so I totally would have just left. I would have been like, you know what? I'm gonna go get a pack of cigarettes and been gone. I would have been fucking out. Like because I don't want to get involved.
So cliche.
Yeah, it was like, I don't want to get involved. I don't want to fucking start a fight. But it's like you don't get to talk to parents that way. And so I think that's what would be startling. And I know that's an extreme example.
That is extreme. But there's plenty
of examples where I know of people who have come up with, especially when they were dating someone who had children. It was just like, man, that kid's are fucking out of control. Because I come from, everybody in my crew got disciplinarian parents. That's the only reason we stayed on the straight and narrow. So the idea that, my God, I know I'm going off on a rant, but it's like not just a parent, that kid who called his mom a bitch or I hate you and shit like that, but also the one who calls their parent by their first name. That's another one. Like if he'd walk, like the night I met him, he was actually in the apartment. I came in and he stood up and shook my hand. I've told the story, but man, if I'd heard him say "Uana" like from the kitchen, I'd be like, "Oh, I gotta kick this kid's ass, and now I gotta go get cigarettes."
It's a good thing you didn't arrive 5 minutes earlier.
I don't know. It's just, I guess we started off talking about definitions, and that is,
what our views are of what it means
to be a man.
What my view was of what it means to be a man. And what your view was of what it means.
I just thought of another one. Of the women, Julia was the worst cook of all 5 that you asked me about earlier.
Right.
But they all can cook. Julia was a horrible cook. Well, she wasn't good. She's gone now. Rest in peace. I love you. She was just not good, especially considering my grandmother is like was amazing. And my ex-wife could cook. You can cook. So there's a surface thing. But think about this. This is something that I would view differently now. Since my mother required all her sons to learn how to cook. Not in some formal education kind of way. Just like, look, motherfucker, I work 2 jobs. Y'all go learn how to, if you want to eat, you better cook.
Right.
While I used to, I hate to admit, but I did think it was important for a woman to know how to cook when I was 22 years old.
Well, you believe it's important for everyone to learn how to cook.
Yeah, if they're going to be feeding me, hell yeah, they need to know what they're doing. Like I don't.
But right? You believe
salt is not a spice.
This is a skill that every person should have.
This and swimming, riding a bike, all that.
There
shit.
you go. So it's not like you believe only women should have this quality.
When I was younger, I thought it was, but as I've gotten older, I recognize like, my mother was one of those freakish people who I said like worked 2 jobs. Left first job, came home and cooked when we were younger, and then took off for the next one.
Right.
So if you're working all the time, you got time to always be honing your culinary skills. You know what I mean? And so there's no judgment for me in that way. I don't know that there was. Fuck that. There probably was judgment when I was younger. Like there's no way I could have gone out on a date with a woman and she'd be like, I can't stand cooking.
I don't know how to boil water.
Exactly. Like, check please.
Yeah.
Like,
that's funny.
I'm out. So, but why don't we do this? I'd be curious to know for listeners how your definition has changed of a man and a woman has changed over years.
I love that idea.
Especially through life experience and what you've seen and through marriage. Just because I just wonder if it's similar to what I know ours has changed, or at least I can speak for myself when I go, mine has gotten a lot more open. I don't think a woman has to do A, B, and C. It's become a lot bigger. And like I said, it's not just aging. It's marriage, divorce, marriage, having a daughter, like all those things kind of impacted thing. So I'd love to hear what other people have as well.
I would love to hear that too. Good idea.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Cheers.
Thanks for joining Drinks with My Wife. Please be sure to click the subscribe button and rate us on Apple Podcast and Spotify.